Welcome to another conversation off the clock. Hi, I'm Carmina Constantino Torres and this is Casey After Hours.
Nagagamit natin yung provision ng saligang batas kung paano gawing accountable yung mga opisyal natin. That the House is allied with the President insofar as the budget is concerned, which I didn't see the past 2 years, which I didn't see during the entire term of President Duterte. Again, Carmina, we're not stupid. Whatever power you're holding right now, whatever influence you're holding right now, whatever position you're holding on to right now, will come to an end.
He took Philippine politics by storm when he entered the arena almost 30 years ago. Spectators hung on to every single word that he said, and he said a lot. Quick on the draw, he made his sentiments known about the pressing issues during that time and even after. Kasama siya sa tinaguriang bright boys noon, kaalyado ni Pangulong Erap, marami siyang napabilib. At ngayon, halos 3 dekada na ang nakakaraan, pangatlo na siya sa pinakamataas na opisyal ng pamahalaan. Sa tagal ng kanyang paninilbihan bilang lingkod bayan, tumaas na rin ba ang antas ng buhay ng kanyang pinaglilinkuran? And if the answer is no, then what's being done wrong? Let's hear it from the Senate President himself. Joining us today, Senate President Francis Chiz Escudero. Senate President Chiz Escudero, thank you for joining us here today. Such a pleasure to have you here on our podcast.
Likewise, Carmina, pleasure at karangalan ko mabisita. Napakaganda mong bahay.
Ay, naku naman.
Congratulations.
Thank you, mamaya ikot tayo. But before that, let's cut to the chase, Senate President. Sabi ng iba, magulo ang bayan. Sabi naman ng iba, okay naman. But from where you sit, how would you describe the current state of the nation?
May pinagdaanan ako na mas magulong bayan kumpara dito. Ang tingin ko dito, bahagi lahat ng anumang ingay, bangayan at mga pinagdidebatihang issue. Bahagi ito ng isang matatag, malakas, and what you would otherwise call a vibrant and strong democracy. When you see the President having a different position from Congress, when you see Congress having a different position from the Senate, when you see a huge chunk of people having a different position from other branches of government, that shows you have a vibrant and strong democracy.
Pero kasama pa ba ng vibrant and strong democracy yung current state of the education sector? For example, yung self-rated involuntary hunger, yung food inflation, can't seem to rein that in. How do you explain that kung maayos sa tingin nyo ang kalagayan ng bayan?
Well, ang sinasabi ko, maayos yung kalagayan ng ating demokrasya at pamahalaan na walang diktador na nagdidikta sa buo at lahat ng ahensya ng pamahalaan. Walang takot yung tao na magsalita at sabihin kung ano yung nasa loob nila, tulad ng sinabi mo lang ngayon. But these problems have been plaguing our country for the past decade or so. With respect to inflation, the poor state or quality of our education system. Now you have to one by one look at not only the former presidents, but former secretaries of education. Exactly what have they done to reduce, lessen, or minimize this, or otherwise increase it during their tenure?
So yung mga ganyang nakikita mo ngayon, so there's a call for the Vice President to get impeached. There's a movement to try to hold officials to account, be responsible for their actions. Tingin nyo ba labas ang politika dito na ito talaga yung dapat mangyari?
I joined Congress in 1998. My father was the congressman at that time. Before 1998, the rules on impeachment in Congress and the provision on impeachment in the Constitution was what was referred to as a dead letter law. Hindi nagamit, hindi nagagamit, hindi ginagamit. Nagsimulang gamitin niya noong 1998 lamang. Ngayon, ibalik ko yung tanong, Carmina. Positibo ba yun o negatibo na nagagamit natin yung provision ng saligang batas kung paano gawing accountable yung mga opisyal natin? I think it's a positive thing as well. There's nothing to be scared of about that. Whether it's going to be done, whether it will be done now or later, because it is a provision, a process provided for in the Constitution to hold officials accountable. It's not extraordinary. It's not something that people should be scared of. It is, after all, part of our system of accountability and checks and balances.
I think the people
enshrined in our Constitution.
Yeah, but I think the people know very well what their rights are. Ang problema, yung mga nasa poder. Kasi ang tagal-tagal na daw, sabi ng iba. I don't know by the time this airs kung umusad na ba or hindi. But at this point, as we speak, hindi pa rin umuusad yung impeachment complaints laban sa Vice Presidente. Lower House is taking it's sweet time. Your thoughts on that?
You have to understand, the president has taken a position that it is not the right time to be doing these things. And you have to understand too that it's a fact of life that the House is allied with the president to the tune of about 70-80%. So the House is simply reflecting the wishes, the desires of the president with respect to the impeachment being held in abeyance and not being done at this time. That would be the simplest explanation why you're seeing the current situation in the House.
Pero hindi ba representante sila ng taong bayan?
Oo, pero so?
What do you mean by so?
You don't get to decide things based on the survey results. Each election, every 3 years, in the case of members of Congress, in the case of senators, half of us will be facing election every 6 years. Then that's when you judge them based on their performance in the previous 3 or 6 years. But it's very difficult, Carmina, to make decisions based on survey results or based on how loud the noise is for a particular side or how silent the noise is for the other side, because that's where the word or the phrase silent majority came from. Sometimes deep waters run silent and quieter.
You've seen things happen.
Yes.
You've seen mob rule. You've seen mob mentality.
Yes.
You've seen how the powerful really use their position, right, for political gains. At this point in our history, what is very clear to you with regard to those in power and the power that they have?
They haven't learned, that none of them learned from history, that nothing lasts forever, that at some point in time it will come to an end. I saw that and I realized that at a young age. I was 15 when EDSA 1 happened. My father was a minister of Marcos when EDSA 1 happened. But because our lives didn't change before EDSA and after EDSA, we didn't feel anything. But for those who wielded power differently at that time, well, I'm sure they felt a big shock the change that occurred. And that's one thing people in power should never forget and should realize. I'm not referring to any person or family, Carmina, but in general, that whatever power you're holding right now, whatever influence you're holding right now, whatever position you're holding on to right now, will come to an end. At ika nga nung kasabihan, yung kasalubong mo habang paakyat ka, yun ang kasalubong mo habang pababa ka. Make sure you're nice to them. Because it'll be the same people that you have to deal with on your way down and when you're at rock bottom.
But you speak of power sort of in a vacuum. Nasaan yung taong bayan dun sa kapangyarihang yun?
Yung nakakasalubong mo, hindi yung mga nasa pwesto din naman ng kapangyarihan, Carmina eh. Yung taong ordinaryo nakakasalubong mo dun eh. As I said, if you treated them properly, if you served them well, then it will all come back to you. Whether you're in power or a smaller position or the higher position you used to hold, it really shouldn't matter.
Yung iba kasi, Senate President, alam nila very well what you just said, that nothing lasts forever, and therefore, they're gonna milk it for whatever it's worth. Marami kang kilalang ganyan.
Pero dapat nakita rin nila sa kasaysayan na karamihan sa kanila pinagbayad at nagbayad dahil doon. Hindi man aktual na sila nakulong, hindi man aktual na binalik yung pera, pero sabihin mo na lang, law of karma, binawi, bumawi at binalik ng Diyos kung ano man yung kinuha na hindi makatarungan at hindi tama.
Let's talk about the budget. People are talking about the budget.
Which is a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Pero ano ba talaga nangyari? Sabi nung iba, it's the most corrupt budget ever. Magkakaroon ng kilos protesta questioning it. I don't know if tutuloy yung pag-question sa Korte Suprema. But from again where you sit, ano ba nangyari sa budget? May mali ba talaga?
Congress decided on certain issues. The president disagreed with some of them and vetoed some, which is again part and parcel of the process. And I actually like it that the executive, the president himself, is taking an active role insofar as the budget is concerned, which I didn't see the past 2 years, which I didn't see during the entire term of President Duterte, when Congress actually held sway completely. And if you will compare the previous budgets with this budget, it's actually not too far off. In fact, in some aspects, it's better. I'll give you some examples. The unprogrammed fund last year was at 8 to 900 billion. Right now, it's at 530 billion for 2025. So approximately a 300 billion reduction compared to before. Now, if you ask me, that's illegal. Well, that question is pending before the Supreme Court. Why? When they gave the figure for the budget, Carmina, even you reported it out, it never included the unprogrammed fund. The totals given never included the unprogrammed fund because the release of this fund is contingent. Contingent upon BIR exceeding its targets, contingent upon new money coming in which was not expected, etc., etc. So it's never included as part of the budget since time immemorial. But then again, it's the first time being questioned before the Supreme Court. As a lawyer, I'd like to see the Supreme Court also weigh in. Number two, there were concerns about PhilHealth. Let me address it specifically too. Again, Carmina, we're not stupid. We're not all that bad. There's a reason why we do certain things too. I guess it just wasn't explained properly by the concerned individuals who are supposed to do it. Why are they not using it? Why do we keep on giving them money? Now, they said it's unconstitutional. Excuse me. When the Constitution was written, PhilHealth was not yet in existence. So it's not unconstitutional. They said it's illegal. Agreed. There's a law that says sin taxes should go to PhilHealth.
Yes.
But Carmina, previous Congresses cannot bind future Congresses. As Senate President, can I pass a law that says 30% of customs collection should go to the Bicol region because we're always hit by typhoons? 5 years from now, next year, 3 years from now, if I'm no longer Senate President and typhoon shifted to Mindanao and Northern Luzon, will the next Congress be bound by the law we passed today? The 30% should still be brought to Bicol? No.
So
circumstances change. And laws passed before cannot bind future Congresses that will pass future laws depending on the situation. So anyway, that's where we're coming from. Now, what did PhilHealth say? What did DOH say? They will reduce the premiums and they will increase the benefits. Even after we took out the 74. Why? They're using their funds, which is as it should be. At the end of the day, budgeting is about allocating scarce resources. If you're able to allocate scarce resources properly, then you did the budget properly. Another aspect of the budget. To the high heavens, Secretary Angara complained about the reduction in the computerization program of DepEd, saying, what about the kids? The original proposed allocation was 12 billion. We put the 10 billion in the unprogrammed fund. Retained 2 billion. Why? From 2022 until 2024, they had a total of 35 billion, give or take, funds allocated for computerization of DepEd for students, which they have not yet implemented. Not a single computer has been delivered to our kids.
Why?
For whatever reason, again, let them explain. But the 2022 funds already reverted last year by December 31 because the budget is only valid for 2 years. And here they are asking for more again? Can't Congress exact accountability and performance from the agencies, given that they're not performing well? Probably it's not Secretary Angara's fault because he only came in last June. But then again, it's the department that we're talking about, the performance of the department per se. In fact, if you look for a supplier anywhere in the world that can supply 35 billion worth of computers in one go, I doubt if you can find one.
Trabahong tamad ba yung nangyari sa pagbalangkas ng budget?
This is the budget process. In February, so that will be next month for the budget of 2026, the DBM will make a budget call. All agencies will present their dream sequence of what they want. And then the DBM will sift through it and give them caps. Hanggang dito lang kayo, hanggang dito lang kayo, hanggang dito lang kayo. And then, from that list, syempre, hindi naman alam ni DBM ano ba talaga nangyayari sa DepEd, ano ba talaga nangyayari, etc., etc. Magbibigay sila ng NEP. But once it goes through the rigors of Congress, remember, this is the executive. Magkakakampi sila. This is Congress, a separate branch. Hindi kami magkakakampi necessarily. So it would go through the rigors of legislation, which it went through.
Okay.
Kaya nagkaroon ng difference. Now, what would you rather have, Carmina? Congress simply saying amen because the NEP is perfect, because DBM is perfect, the President is perfect, and we will just say, okay, whatever you want, we will just say amen to it and pass it. That was done during martial law, Carmina. Was it any better than now?
Oo.
Not necessarily.
Pero halimbawa, yung humihingi ng budget na ganito, kasi yun na yung nakaugalian, pero hindi naman nila ginasta ng maayos, hindi napunta sa dapat mapunta, and yet they're asking for it again because they're used to it. Hindi ba pagkatamad yun?
That's where Congress comes in. But that's why, hindi naman sa tamad, but because it will go through the rigors of legislation. It goes through a process, as I said. Now, sometimes they're wrong, Carmina, sometimes Congress is wrong. I mean, but that's part of legislation. Again, I like what I'm seeing, given the disagreements, given the Supreme Court coming in once in a while, correcting it, meaning it's actually, as a lawyer, as a legislator, it actually shows, as I said earlier when we began, that we have a vibrant and living democracy.
Okay. One more question about the budget before we move on. The DepEd. Bakit ilinagay yung mga non-traditional DepEd agencies? Tapos linagay na doon, hindi naman yan kasama. PMA, ano pa yung mga ibang linagay dyan, hindi naman yan kasama dati. Bakit ganun yung nangyari?
Hindi kami ang gumawa nun. It was DBM that did that.
Why?
That's tagging. That's already what you call tagging. Congress passed a difficult law to comply with, which is GAD. 5% of the budget of all LGUs in the national government should be there. Difficult to comply and still adapt to the changing times. So that's where tagging actually started. Now, the framers of the Constitution said education should have the highest budgetary priority.
Correct.
That's why they should tag that too, to make sure if it's compliant or not. So they get the education aspects, even if it's being implemented by other agencies. For example, the school building program of about, I think, 21 billion, if I'm not mistaken. It's being implemented by the DPWH, but it's tagged as DepEd.
Okay.
So similarly, whatever education aspect, because remember, in PMA, the cadets are being given a college education.
That's correct.
So they're just tagging it, but it's DBM who's doing that. Really, it's not Congress who's doing the tagging.
Is that correct?
Not for me to question the wisdom behind the tagging.
Let's talk about the opposition. Sabi nung iba...
Which one?
Exactly my point. Exactly my point. And here it goes. Because you have been on either side of the fence. Admin one point, opposition at another. Saan ka ba
In
ngayon?
different governments.
In different governments, of course. Pero saan ka ba ngayon? How would you classify? How would you tag yourself?
Let me see. I am with the administration because the party that I belong to, the Nationalist People's Coalition, is allied with and is part of the coalition allied with the administration. That's the simple answer. So tagging for tagging purposes.
Okay.
But to give you an example how vibrant and different the democracy in the Philippines is, when I ran for Senate President, Carmina, there are 5 members of the NPC in the Senate. Only 1 voted for me. So, that you're allied with, coalesced with, part of, does not necessarily mean that on every issue, you will be on all fours with whatever the so-called administration slate would be pushing for.
Hindi ba that only spells personal interest and personal political gain?
Well, not necessarily, because usually it's easier to hide behind the party rather than take a personal position and stand based on your beliefs and principles.
Fair enough.
In my years in politics, I usually pay a dearer price for those positions that I have taken compared to when I simply hid under the coattails and the skirt of the political party I belonged to at that time.
Is there a real opposition now?
Yes, but it's no longer an opposition that's against the administration, the government, simply because they're against the government. Again, for me, it's a step forward. Why? Dati ang opposition, kahit anong gawin ng gobyerno, tama man o mali, mali. Di ba? Wala nang ginawang tama ang gobyerno. Pero nung sila naman yung nakaupo,
Ganun
naman yung ginawa nila. Di ba? So, balik na. Now, the opposition you're seeing is actually, when I asked sino, nasan? Because the opposition now is changing. They're actually agreeing with the administration on some points.
So it's issue-based?
Which is that good or is that bad? I would like to think that it's good. It is issue-based now. So you see them taking the side of the administration when they were running after, for example, the previous administration. But they were against some provisions in the budget that the administration took. They're in favor of impeaching the vice president. It's the administration that doesn't want the vice president impeached. So in a way, it is issue-based. They've sided with the administration whenever they agreed. And they're opposing the administration on issues that they disagree with. Isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a working opposition for you and not simply an opposition for the sake of opposing, regardless of what the administration does, right or wrong?
Pero meron din namang mga ibang politiko, Senate President, na they want to fashion themselves as the opposition. Pero ang punot dulo talaga nila, kasi yun yung okay, yun yung sexy, yun yung kakagatin ng mga tao. It's not really principles-based, but they just want to appear to be opposition for the sake of their continued political existence. What do you think about those people?
If you look at those people, I won't name them.
Name mo na.
No, but those who have taken that position aren't faring well in the surveys. Those are relatively quiet, more quiet, speaking only when necessary. Those who are, well, not really in the middle, but calling it as they see it. Oo, pag maganda, hindi, pag mali. They're faring better in the surveys. So, you referred earlier about public support, public opinion, public opposition. Well, you'll see it this coming election. Sino ba mananalo? Yung hardline opposition dahil tingin nila usot, mas marami yun? O yung calling it as they see it? Opposition pag may kailangan labanan, pero kaibigan pag may kailangan suportahan.
What were the events that you took personally that further shaped your political beliefs? I mean, I recall the campaign that you led for FPJ. I recall when he died. And then when you ran for office as vice president and you lost. When you campaigned for Attorney Leni Robredo and her campaign lost, did these shape your political beliefs even further? Maybe added, maybe subtracted?
No. It added. It didn't necessarily shape. I see it as simply being part and parcel of my political journey. The victories, the losses, lahat naman yun magkakasama. You learn from the victories, you learn from the losses too. It didn't really shape in the sense that this part came from there, this part I got from that. No, not really. It's an amalgamation, I guess, of sorts. Of, again, victories and losses, experiences and campaigns, and the changing landscape as well. Of campaigning. I like that part. I like learning from that. I like running campaigns, actually. Better and more than running myself.
We're just a few months away from the May 2025 elections. I remember the last time we had an interview, it was there at the Senate.
At my office.
At your office, and we were talking about, the portraits that hang there. Pagdating ng Mayo 2025, malamang yung mga portraits na yon, pareho pa rin yung apelido, baka mag-iba yung muka, may madadagdag siguro na bago. What does that tell you? That it's the same names, same faces, and the country's problems sort of remain the same?
Part of being at peace and trusting, Carmina, is, on the political side, is trusting the Filipino voter. That they know better. Better than you, better than me. Regardless of our personal opinion that this guy should be there, this guy should not be there, this guy doesn't deserve to be there, that guy deserves to be there. We have to trust and rely on the wisdom, the collective wisdom of the majority of our voters to decide who they want to serve in whatever capacity in government, whether we agree with it or not. The alternative, na tayo yung masunod, na mas konti tayo, kunwari, I think is far worse than listening to the collective wisdom of the majority, even if you disagree with it. That's what living in a democracy essentially means. Accepting that will of the collective majority, whether we agree with it or not. And if you strongly disagree with it and you have your space, your field of influence, then that means you should work harder to get that majority to agree with you, to agree with us, to agree with whoever, insofar as choosing our next public officials are concerned. From senator down to barangay elections might be postponed. So down to municipal councilor for the 2025 elections.
Mr. Senate President, pagtatanungin po kayo, saan ba patungo ang bayan na ito? Anong sagot nyo?
Naniniwala ako nasa tamang direksyon. Hindi man natin marating yung minimithi at layunin nating marating sa loob ng maikling panahong ito. Ang importante, yung mga yapak na mga hakbang na tinatahak natin patungo sa direksyong yon. Again, when I said it's headed in the right direction, the economy is growing, at least macro. Inflation is going down, at least in the macro. But every economist will tell you, the macro assumptions should be good for at least 6 to 8 months for it to be felt at the lowest level. So the challenge for us is to keep it afloat. Now with the elections coming, there's a good chance we can maintain those increased numbers. I mean, so far as increased GDP is concerned. If we can decide on the budget soon enough, given the review of the president, and we can take advantage of the summer months for infrastructure development, then you can see the economy growing further. Not only in the city centers, but in the countrysides as well, where most of the infrastructure programs of the administration of Marcos is geared towards. So yes, we are in the right direction. It hasn't been felt yet down below, I agree. But that's the challenge for us. It will never reach them, Carmina, unless we can continue this momentum. That's the only way.
Naisip ko lang, Senate President.
Of course, ma'am.
Nung nagsisimula ka, pasensya na, balik ako ng balik doon kasi nasubaybayan ko talaga yung political career nyo. You can actually say na ito, right this moment, this was the future of your 1998 self when you entered the arena. So the question is, ito ba yung pinangarap mong kinabukasan dapat ng bansa nung nagsisimula ka pa lang?
Nung nagsisimula ako, Carmina, walang internet. No, I'll give you an example.
I got it. I know where you're headed.
When I was studying, library at encyclopedia lang kami. That's a far cry from the public school students we have now. It may not be perfect. It may not be ideal. It may not be exactly where we want to be. But at the end of the day, Carmina, you're alive. A lot of Filipinos are living better lives, if not the lives that they want to live. There's still a lot of work to be done, indeed, and I hope this or the next administration will be able to address, if not all, at least a couple of these issues, and let the next administration complete the job for them.
All right, Senate President Francis Chiz Escudero, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Carmina. Thank you to your followers and televiewers.
And that's it for another episode of KC After Hours. You know the drill. Like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.